guess growing up, I never once considered that I would be working in the field of addiction and dysfunctional family systems. You know, when you graduate from college or you're in high school and somebody says, well, what do you want to do when you get older or when you grow up or when you graduate? I don't ever recall saying, I'm going to help people that have addiction issues and their families. And it wasn't until addiction affected our family system, and our family, like most families that we interact with, went about it by trying to fix the problems themselves internally. And as the family got worse, so did the substance use. And my family had retained the services of a professional intervention, and it wasn't until then that our family saw not only how the addiction was affecting us, but also what we were doing as a family that was making the addiction worse. And we came to realize that although the substance use was destructive, as was the substance user, it was also the family and the way that they went about it that caused a lot of the heartache and turmoil. So when I was given an opportunity to work in the field, I took it. And when I first started doing interventions, like I think most interventionists, believed that we were going to run out there and save the world and everybody was going to call begging us to come and get their loved one help. And it didn't take but a half a day to realize that's not how it worked. I realized very quickly that the substance user getting help was the easy part. It was the families not letting us do it and sabotaging the process and coming up with every excuse under the sun as to why they didn't need to do this, or this wouldn't work, or their loved one would just say no, or we'll push them over the edge. Like the excuse, there wasn't enough fabric to build the I can't get my loved one help excuse t-shirt. And I had gone back to school and obtained graduate degrees in counseling and addiction studies. And it wasn't until then where I really understood the commonalities and the similarities in almost every family system. So our interventions went from going out there and talking people into rehab to going out there and addressing the problem and to helping the families change with the substance user. And I remember having a conversation with a treatment center owner, and I asked the man, I said, what would you say is the number one reason why people leave treatment against, medical advice? Without even finishing the sentence, he said, their families. They pull them out, they fly them home, they are toxic, they call our center. I mean, it always came back to families. And the second reason was proximity. Anytime it was a local client, they inevitably left within 72 hours. So we went back and we looked at all of it, and we had developed today, which is called the Self-Awareness Family Education Intervention Model and Family Recovery Coaching. And our beliefs and philosophies and processes is we come in and we work with the family and we help them identify things that they've been doing that have been keeping the addiction where it is, if nothing else, not improving and often getting worse. And what I learned from not only going back to school, but engaging in certain strategies and counseling efforts of my own is so much of what has happened has been through family of origin beliefs and issues and dysfunction. And if there's one thing I can say today about this process and how it's impacted me in my personal life, is knowing what I know today about family systems and knowing what my upbringing was like and knowing what substance abuse was like in our family. If all of it was worth nothing, it was worth the fact that our daughters are able to grow up in an environment in a household complete opposite of what we experienced as children. And that has an impact on them in their future. They never have to witness or go through the things that I went through or others go through, whether it be addiction or just this family dysfunction. And it's not to say that every family doesn't have dysfunction. Just because you know a lot doesn't mean you know everything. And every family has its trials and tribulations. But we are able to rewrite family of origins moving forward. We are able to stop the destructive patterns in its tracks, like I've been able to do with my children, who I've said will not experience the same upbringing on any level that I did, not even anywhere remotely close. And even when that instinct to act out the way that your parents may have raised you, you now have the self-awareness to stop that, because our actions affect other people. And that's what this company is built on, is understanding that the family, my whole life, professionally, personally, you're told it's not the family's fault. And yes, it is on a big level, not intentionally, not in a bad way, not in a you screwed this up thing, but so much of the addiction impacts the family in such a profound way that they can't help themselves by acting in a way that's counterproductive to the solution. And I think the biggest challenges we face here at Family First Intervention is how overwhelmingly difficult it is to get a family to do the intervention. 9 out of 10 times people accept help when we get there. 1 out of 10 times families let us come. And it really boils down to the primary enabler is afraid of what will happen to them if their loved one gets well. Will I no longer be a caretaker? Will I no longer have a purpose? Will they hate me forever? And they don't do something about the addiction because they're more worried about how it's going to affect them. Other family roles do the same thing, and it always goes back to when I ask a family what was life like before the addiction started, they can often tell me that it was nice, it was good, it's better than it is now. And I could even ask them, when your child was young and they did something you didn't approve of, did you have a problem saying no? And the answer is never. I would just say no. So why is it different today? And what we have realized is that over time, families take on this maladaptive thinking. And they actually are more comfortable in the status quo than they are facing the fears of the unknown of what an outcome of an intervention can bring. So that's why we do what we do. A lot of interventionists go out in the field and they do an amazing job of inspiring the substance user to go into a treatment center. Some of them do a great job, but that's all they do. And we have noticed that when we do all of the family work before, during, and after, we have profoundly different results. So going back to the question I asked the guy that owned the treatment center, the number one reason why people leave, he said, families, if you were to interview any treatment center or professional organization that we refer clients to, they will tell you that the rates of people completing treatment and the rates of people staying and not leaving against medical advice are profoundly higher than those that come in just because the family said you need to go to rehab, or from an interventionist that just inspired them to go for the moment. So that's what Family First Intervention is, and that's why we built the curriculum the way that we did. There are families that even say, I don't need all this aftercare stuff. And it's like, if you're saying that, you need it even more than the ones who know they need it. And, we don't have to do all this other stuff. We can be like every other intervention company and just charge the same amount as all the others and just do the 12-step call and talk your loved one in, and then you can just go back to the way you think you should be doing things. We have all this extra stuff for a reason. It's because it's effective and it works and it helps solve the problem. Families who just think putting their loved one in treatment and it all is going to be well, they will soon realize that is the furthest thing from the truth. So we're grateful today that we have the ability to offer what we offer, and we're even more grateful for the outcomes that we see, not only in the substance users' completion rates and sobriety rates, but also when a family tells us that was the best decision they ever made, or when they say, I can't believe we waited this long. That's the best feedback we can hear, because if there's one thing I can always tell a family is, they may not always accept help when we come. You may not always engage in our family recovery coaching. You may not do anything different, but I do know this: in 2 decades, I have never once made a situation worse. If nothing else, it is slightly improved to greatly improved. And that is largely dependent upon whether or not the family follows through with our protocol. So that's who we are. That's where we stand on what should be done on an intervention, and it is very effective. And we know families struggle. We know it's hard for them to make a decision. But one substance user going to treatment is far less difficult than getting 5, 6, 7, 8 different family members acting out various dysfunctional family roles, misplaced emotional anger at everybody other than the primary enabler who they're really angry at because what they're doing to the addict. And they don't see that, and they think what they're doing is working, and it's not. And you got to give the substance user a chance. You got to let professionals come in and show you a different way.